Karen was hosting a family dinner when her father-in-law, Andrew, casually reached over and took her plate. "Women eat after men," he said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Karen froze. She instinctively reached for her plate, but her husband, Ken, just shook his head. "It's tradition," he murmured. "Tradition?" She sat there, watching as everyone ate the meal she had spent hours preparing, her anger simmering beneath the surface. And in that moment, she made a decision. The next day, she sent out an invitation for a dinner they would never forget. The cost of tradition. Karen and Ken had been married for 3 years. It wasn't a bad marriage, but lately, she had started noticing things, small things, that didn't sit right with her. Ken wasn't abusive, he wasn't cruel. But sometimes, when he was around his family, he was different. Andrew, his father, was the kind of man who ruled his house with an iron fist. His mother, Linda, was quiet, never speaking up. His brother, Nelson, was a carbon copy of their father, loud, opinionated, and utterly convinced that women should know their place. Nelson's wife, Tina, was sweet but always looked tense, as if bracing for someone to tell her to shut up. Karen hadn't grown up like that. Her parents had raised her to believe that respect was mutual, that marriage was a partnership, that a woman wasn't just there to serve a man. She had assumed that as long as Ken wasn't like his family, it didn't matter. She was wrong. The game begins. That night, there was no holiday, no special occasion, just a simple dinner at their home. Karen had spent the entire day cooking. Not because anyone expected her to, but because she loved making a house feel warm and welcoming. Because she wanted to impress them. She made roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, collard greens, cornbread, the works. She plated everything beautifully, set the table, and lit a few candles. She was proud of how it had all come together. When everyone arrived, Andrew made his usual remark, "Ken really lucked out with you." Which, of course, was his way of saying, "Good job finding a wife who cooks and cleans." Karen smiled through it. She was used to this by now. They sat down, and she served each plate one by one. Hers was the last. But just as she was about to sit, a hand reached across the table. Andrew. He took her plate, took it right out from in front of her, and passed it down to Nelson. "Women eat after men," he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Karen froze. She actually laughed, thinking it had to be a joke. Who the hell says something like that in 2025? But then she looked around. Nelson was already digging in like nothing had happened. Linda stared at her plate, silent as ever. Tina looked uncomfortable but kept her head down. And Ken? Her own husband simply gave her a look. Not a look of shame, or disbelief, or even anger at his father. No. It was a look that said, "Don't make a scene." Then, in a quiet voice, he murmured, "It's tradition." Something inside Karen snapped. She wasn't raised to be an afterthought. She wasn't about to sit there in her own home, waiting for permission to eat like some servant. But she knew that if she lashed out right then and there, she would be dismissed as overreacting. So she did something worse. She said nothing. She sat there, still as stone, as they ate. She didn't reach for another plate. She didn't touch the food she had spent hours making. She just sat. Watching. She watched Ken laugh at something Nelson said. She watched Andrew take second helpings. She watched Linda eat in silence, the way she had been doing her whole life. And she let the anger simmer. She started planning. Turning the tables. The next morning, Karen woke up early and sent a group text. "Dinner at our place again next Sunday. My treat." Ken looked at her, surprised. "Another dinner? Are you sure? You were pretty quiet last night." Karen smiled. "I just want to make sure your family knows how much I appreciate them." That Sunday, she went all out. Prime rib. Garlic butter shrimp. Scalloped potatoes. Freshly baked bread. Roasted asparagus. The best meal she had ever made, the kind of meal people remember, the kind that makes your mouth water the second you smell it. By the time they arrived, the house was filled with the rich aroma of roasted garlic and butter. The men sat first, just like last time. They reached for their forks. And that's when Karen struck. She stood up, walked over, and one by one, she took their plates right out from under them. Then, she handed them to the women, Linda, Tina, and herself. "Women eat first," she said, her voice as calm and steady as Andrew's had been the week before. Silence. Andrew's jaw tightened. Nelson scoffed, shaking his head like she was being ridiculous. Ken blinked at her. "Babe, what are you doing?" Karen picked up her fork. Cut a piece of prime rib. Took a slow, deliberate bite. Then, she swallowed and smiled. "It's tradition." Andrew pushed back from the table. "We don't do things like this." Karen chewed, swallowed, and tilted her head. "Exactly." Nelson's face reddened. "This is stupid." Karen raised an eyebrow. "It wasn't stupid last week." And then, something unexpected happened. Tina, sweet, quiet Tina, let out a small snort of laughter. She quickly covered it with a cough, but Karen caught it. For the first time, Tina was really looking at her husband. For the first time, Linda picked up her fork before Andrew. She still looked nervous, but she did it. And Karen? She took her sweet time eating. While the men sat there, uncomfortable, hungry, and completely powerless. Karen leaned back in her chair, wiped her mouth with deliberate ease, and then, without a trace of hesitation, spoke. "Since the women cooked," she said, her voice calm, "the men can do the dishes." The room went still. Andrew's face twisted into something between shock and rage. Priceless. Nelson actually laughed, assuming it was a joke. But when Karen didn't move, when she didn't start clearing plates like an obedient little housewife, his smile faded. And Ken. Oh, her dear husband. He hesitated, glancing at his father, then back at her. There was a war happening behind his eyes, loyalty to his family, to his upbringing, clashing against the undeniable truth of the moment. And then, he sighed. He stood up. He picked up the plates. And just like that, the balance of power shifted. Underscore 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 underscore. The reckoning. That night, after everyone had gone, Karen and Ken sat in the kitchen. The sink was still full of dishes. The air between them was thick, heavy with unspoken words. Ken was quiet, swirling the amber liquid in his glass, staring at the table like it had betrayed him. Karen leaned against the counter, arms crossed, waiting. Finally, he spoke. "What the hell was that?" She raised an eyebrow. "Dinner." He let out a humorless laugh. "You humiliated my dad." She tilted her head. "Did I? Or did I just show him what it feels like to be on the other side?" Ken set his drink down, hard. "You made everyone uncomfortable." Karen shrugged. "Good." His jaw clenched. "I don't understand why you had to turn it into a whole thing." And that was when she lost it. She slammed her hand against the counter. "Oh, so it was fine when your dad did it to me? But the second I do the exact same thing, suddenly it's a problem? That's just how he is." Ken shot back. "No." She cut him off, her voice sharp as a blade. "That's just how you let him be. That's how your mother lets him be. That's how your brother treats Tina. And I guarantee you, that's exactly how he's raising his sons to be, too." Ken flinched at that. Karen softened her voice, but not her resolve. "I am not some submissive housewife, Ken. I am your wife. Your partner. And if you think I'm going to sit there and wait my turn like I'm less than you, you've got another thing coming. He exhaled through his nose, rubbing his temples. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. No. I'm finally making it as big as it needs to be. Underscore 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 underscore. The first crack. The next morning, Karen woke up to her phone buzzing. Tina. She glanced at Ken, still asleep, then slipped out of bed and answered. Tina? A hesitation. Then, in a quiet, shaky voice. I wanted to say thank you. Karen frowned. For what? For standing up to them, Tina whispered. For showing me that I'm not crazy for thinking this isn't normal. Karen sat down at the kitchen table, her stomach twisting. Tina, how bad is it? A shaky breath. I don't know. I mean, Nelson never hit me or anything, but she stopped. Karen stayed silent, waiting. He talks to me like I'm a child. He tells me what to wear, what to cook, who I can and can't see. If I ever push back, he tells me I'm emotional or hysterical. That I need to calm down. And his dad backs him up every time. Karen's hands curled into fists. And last night, Tina continued, voice barely above a whisper, when you flipped the script? I watched Nelson's face. He was furious. But not because he thought it was unfair. Karen swallowed. Then why? Tina took a shaky breath. Because for the first time, he wasn't in control. Silence. Then, in a voice so soft it was almost a breath. I don't know what to do. Karen nodded, even though Tina couldn't see her. You don't have to decide anything right now, she said gently. But you do deserve better. Just know that, okay? A sniffle. Okay. Karen could hear the tears in her voice. And in that moment, she knew something had shifted. And there was no going back. Underscore 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 underscore. The warning. She didn't expect the call. 2 days later, her phone rang at work. Andrew. She stared at the screen. Then, slowly, she answered. Hello? Silence. Then, a slow inhale. You think you're clever, don't you? Karen leaned back in her chair, pressing her fingers against her temple. Andrew, if this is about the dinner. This is about my son, he snapped. She frowned. Excuse me? You embarrassed him in front of his family. You put ideas in his wife's head. You've been poisoning him against us since the day you married him. She almost laughed. Poisoning him, she repeated. By expecting to be treated like a person? Don't play dumb, Andrew spat. I know you're kind. Women like you don't want equality, you want control. You want to turn my boy into some weak, spineless excuse for a man. I raised him better than that. Karen took a slow, measured breath. Then, with deadly calm, she said, Well, Andrew, if you're so convinced your son is weak, maybe you should ask yourself who raised him that way. Silence. Then, a low chuckle. You think you've won something here, he sneered. Let me tell you something, sweetheart, a woman who fights her husband's family doesn't stay married for long. And then he hung up. Karen sat there, staring at her phone. Her heart pounded. Not from fear. From rage. Andrew had underestimated her. He thought she was just some defiant little girl who needed to be put in her place. But what he didn't realize was that she wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for Tina. For Linda. For every woman in that family who had ever been forced to wait their turn. And Andrew? Oh, he had no idea what was coming next. The liberation. You're embarrassing this family. You can't just walk out of a marriage. A wave of rage surged through Karen. She turned to Ken, her voice sharp as a blade. Are you going to let them do this? Right here, in our house. Ken looked torn. Then, without a word, he walked to the door. Karen stiffened. Ken. He opened it. Nelson and Andrew stepped inside as if they owned the place. Tina flinched as Nelson approached. Are you out of your mind? His voice was almost soft. Come home. Let's talk like adults. But Karen saw it, the way his fingers twitched at his sides, the way his eyes flicked to Andrew for approval. He wasn't here to talk. He was here to win. Tina shook her head. Nelson's face hardened. No? Her voice wavered, but she didn't back down. I'm not coming back with you. Nelson exhaled sharply through his nose, like he was trying to stay in control. Then he turned to Ken. Tell her she's being ridiculous. Ken said nothing. Andrew took over, his glare pinning Karen in place. This is your doing. Karen crossed her arms, unfazed. Damn right it is. His eyes darkened. You are destroying this family. Karen let out a cold laugh. No, Andrew. I'm just exposing what was already broken. He stepped closer, towering over her, trying to intimidate. But Karen didn't move an inch. You have no idea what you've started, he said, his voice low and dangerous. And that's when she snapped. She looked him dead in the eye, her voice like steel. I started nothing. You did. The day you taught your sons that their wives were beneath them. The day you told your daughter-in-law she had no right to leave. The day you raised your son to believe control was the same as love. Nelson's jaw clenched. His fists curled. Then Tina spoke. I'm filing for divorce. The words dropped like a bomb. Nelson turned to her, stunned. You don't mean that. Her lips trembled, but her voice was steady. I do. Andrew stepped forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. No woman in this family gets divorced. Tina lifted her chin. Then I guess I'm not part of this family anymore. And just like that, the power shifted. Andrew couldn't believe it. His control, his legacy, was slipping through his fingers. Nelson looked like he'd been punched in the gut. And Ken. Ken looked like he was realizing, for the first time, that maybe, just maybe, his father wasn't the man he thought he was. Then Andrew did something that shocked everyone. He turned to Ken, his voice sharp. Get in the car. Ken blinked. What? Andrew's face was red with fury. I will not let this woman poison you. We are leaving. Karen felt ice flood her stomach. Andrew wasn't just trying to control Tina. He was trying to take Ken with him. And Ken. Ken hesitated. For one terrifying moment, Karen saw it, the pull, the years of conditioning, the need to be a good son. And she thought, oh God, he's going to go. But then. I'm not leaving. Andrew's face froze. Nelson looked just as shocked as Karen felt. Ken squared his shoulders. You heard me, Dad. I'm not going. Andrew's eyes burned into him. Don't be stupid, boy. You walk away from us, and you're done. No coming back. Ken took a slow, steady breath. Then he looked at Karen and said, I'm staying with my wife. Andrew stormed out. Nelson was too stunned to say anything. He just shot Tina one last look, one full of anger and betrayal, before following his father. The door slammed behind them. And then, silence. Tina was crying. But this time, Karen knew it wasn't out of fear. She turned to Ken. "Are you okay?" He let out a deep, shuddering breath. "I don't know." And she understood. Tonight, he had lost something, a father, a brother. But maybe, just maybe, he had gained something, too. A new beginning. Tina filed for divorce. She moved into her own place, got a job, started therapy. For the first time in years, she smiled without fear. Linda, shockingly, left Andrew. She packed a bag and disappeared overnight. When she finally reached out, it was from a small apartment 3 towns away. She was starting over. And Ken. Ken struggled. There were nights when he almost called his father. When the weight of undoing years of conditioning nearly crushed him. But he chose Karen. He chose them. One night, months later, he sat beside her and whispered, "I see it now." Karen didn't ask, "See what?" Because she already knew. And in that moment, she realized. This wasn't just her victory. It was theirs. And finally, they were free.